In the spring of 363 AD, the most powerful man on earth marched his army into Persia. Emperor Julian, Rome's finest military mind, battle-hardened, brilliant, undefeated. He never came home. He died on Persian soil. His army retreated in humiliation, and within a century, the empire he led was gone forever. That was not an accident. That was a pattern. And that pattern has repeated itself so many times across so many centuries that Professor Jiang calls it the single most important and most ignored lesson in all of human history. A pattern so consistent, so brutal, so mathematically precise that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And here is the part that will genuinely disturb you. Right now, in real time, a new empire is walking straight into that same pattern, step by step, decision by decision, with the same arrogance, the same blindness, the same assumption that this time will be different. We will tell you exactly who. We will tell you exactly why. And we will show you, using game theory and 3,000 years of documented history, how this ends. But that reveal comes at the very end of this video, because to understand what is happening today, you first need to understand what happened to every single empire that came before. Stay with us. This is the story they do not teach in any classroom. Let us go back, all the way back. Alexander the Great, 330 BC. The man had never lost a battle, not one. He had already conquered Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the entire Persian heartland. By every military measure, Persia was finished. But then something strange happened. Alexander died at 32. His empire shattered overnight. His generals tore each other apart. The Macedonian world collapsed into civil war. And in the ruins, a new power rose, the Parthians, Iranians, who then controlled the Middle East for the next 500 years. Think about that. Alexander won every battle and still lost the war. Then came Rome. The Romans did not make the same mistake of one dramatic invasion. They were smarter than that. They fought the Iranians, then called the Parthians, for over 300 years, 3 centuries of grinding, disciplined professional warfare. Julius Caesar planned a decisive Persian campaign. He was assassinated before it began. General Crassus invaded in 53 BC. His army was annihilated at the Battle of Carrhae, one of the worst defeats in Roman history. Emperor Julian, the brilliant one, invaded in 363 AD, died on Persian soil. And after 300 years of this, after all that blood and treasure and genius, Rome fell. The Persian Empire was still standing. Then the Mongols. If you do not know the Mongols, understand this. They were not just an army. They were a force of nature. They destroyed Baghdad, one of the greatest cities on earth, in a single week. They killed millions. They erased entire civilizations from the map. They conquered Iran. And then the most extraordinary thing in military history happened. The Mongol conquerors converted to Islam, adopted Persian culture, learned the Persian language, became patrons of Persian art and poetry, and within 2 generations they were more Persian than the Persians. Iran did not defeat the Mongols on the battlefield. Iran absorbed them, digested them, made them Iranian. And then, in the 20th century, the Soviet Union, a nuclear superpower. They occupied northern Iran twice. They refused to leave in 1946. Stalin himself said no. He was forced out anyway. A nuclear superpower forced out of Iran. Professor Jiang calls this the most underappreciated strategic reality in modern geopolitics. Every empire, every time, without exception. But why? Why does this keep happening? That is where the game theory becomes genuinely frightening. Professor Jiang identifies 4 structural reasons why Iran has broken every empire that has touched it, and each one is more devastating than the last. The first is strategic depth. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. It has 90 million people. It has the Zagros Mountains in the west, the Alborz Mountains in the north, and vast deserts and difficult terrain in every direction. Napoleon's most famous warning was never march on Moscow. He could have said the same about Tehran. Military analysts estimate that to actually control Iranian territory, you would need somewhere between 3 and 4 million soldiers. The entire active United States military is 1.3 million people. The math is simply impossible before a single shot is fired. The second reason is what Professor Jiang calls the inverted military pyramid. In a classical military, your strategy is built around your cheapest and most flexible assets at the base, infantry, soldiers who can go anywhere, adapt to anything, and hold territory. That is how every successful empire in history fought. The American military has flipped this entirely upside down. Air power sits at the base of the entire American strategy. The most expensive, least flexible, hardest to sustain asset is the foundation of how America fights. The F-35 fighter jet costs over $100 million per plane and took 26 years to develop. The Gerald Ford aircraft carrier costs $13 billion. The Patriot missile defense system costs billions more. And the reason for this, according to Jiang, is not military logic, it is financial logic. Air power generates the biggest contracts. It feeds the biggest defense corporations. The military is not designed to win wars, it is designed to generate profit. Against Iran, this is catastrophic. Which brings us to the third reason, asymmetric cost exchange. This is where the mathematics become almost surreal. One Iranian drone, $50,000. One American interceptor missile, between $3 and $10 million. Every single time Iran fires one drone and America attempts to shoot it down, America spends 60 times more money than Iran. 60 times. And Iran does not fire one drone. Iran fires hundreds simultaneously, overwhelming systems designed for a different kind of threat entirely. Professor Jiang describes a documented incident where a single Iranian ballistic missile was targeted by 11 separate American interceptors. All 11 missed. Tens of millions of dollars in American ordnance, one missile. This is ancient Persian strategy, updated for the 21st century. You do not fight the empire head-on. You make it too expensive to stay. You bleed it slowly. You drain the will and the treasury simultaneously. The Parthians did this to Rome for 300 years. The fourth reason is the will to fight. This is the most important factor and the hardest one for Western analysts to accept. Iran is not just a government fighting a war. It is a civilization that has been fighting for its survival for 3,000 years. The institutional memory of invasion and resistance is baked into the culture, the religion, the identity. Compare that to the other side of this equation, where less than half the public supports the conflict, where the legislature is deeply divided over funding, where casualties are being managed as a political problem rather than acknowledged as a human one. One side has been preparing for this confrontation for 20 years, studying tactics, building manufacturing capacity, mapping every military base in the region, analyzing the psychology of decision-making in Washington. The other side had no plan beyond the initial strikes and assumed the opponent would simply give up. That contrast tells you almost everything you need to know.
Now here is the part we promised you at the beginning. The reveal that makes everything else make sense. This conflict is not really about Iran. It is about the architecture of the entire global financial system. Since 1973, in a deal struck between Washington and Riyadh, almost all of the world's oil has been traded exclusively in U.S. dollars. This arrangement, known as the petrodollar system, is the hidden foundation of American global power. Because everyone needs oil, everyone needs dollars. That permanent global demand for the dollar is what allows America to run massive deficits, finance a military that costs more than the next 10 countries combined, and maintain an empire without the economic discipline that history normally demands of great powers. Remove the petrodollar, and you do not just weaken America, you collapse the entire financial architecture that American power rests on. Now, look at what Iran currently controls: the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway through which 20% of the entire world's oil supply passes every single day. By demonstrating credible, sustained control over that strait, Iran is not just threatening a military conflict, it is demonstrating to every nation on earth that it, not America, controls the physical flow of the oil that the entire petrodollar system depends on. The Gulf states, the linchpin of the entire arrangement, are watching this with genuine terror. They receive 90% of their food imports through the Strait of Hormuz. Their desalination plants, which provide the majority of fresh water to cities of millions of people, are vulnerable. If those plants are struck, cities run out of water in 2 weeks. A Gulf state that cannot guarantee its own survival has very little incentive to keep recycling oil revenues into American financial markets. And if that recycling stops, the financial system that underwrites the entire American empire begins to unravel. Professor Zhang Shuiqin's final question, the one he leaves hanging in the air, is not whether this pattern is real. The pattern is documented. The pattern is consistent. The pattern is mathematically, historically, and strategically undeniable. His question is simpler and far more unsettling. Does anyone in power today know enough history to see it coming?